So I have been testing placement of solar panels. I thought I could have them here on the front corner of the deck, and it works well after about 11 o'clock, but until 10:30 or so, this is in complete shade, whereas that area over there is in full sun, and it's in full sun most of the day. So I'm thinking of moving these from here, setting up a small rack over there, and getting the 400 watt solar panels in full sun almost all day long, because I'm getting maybe 250 watts of power out of these, which I know I'm not going to get a full 400. That's just for perfect conditions, but I think I've got some shading going on here with the pole and the lantern and stuff like that, and because these are all, I think, connected in series, that will cause all of the solar panels to degrade, whereas over there it's wide open. So I'm going to cut some maple staves. I have a tree that I downed last year, and I'm going to use that to build just a simple rack over here where I can set the solar panels up, and then I'll need to reconfigure and rewire. So I took a trip to the lumber store this morning and picked up these beauties, and they're going to go right here to make a rack for the solar panels, and that should get me some better sun. The only problem with lumber from the lumber store, it says rough cut, and you need to finish it.
As with any Adirondack project, there's a lot of digging involved, and all the digging includes many rocks and roots. This project was no different. Once the hole is prepared, I take the sharpened pole and I try to drive it down into the ground as far as I can. This is aided by the pain stick, or Mr. Boomy, or my big hammer. Come to find out, I would need a bigger hammer than this eventually. I thought I was done, but realized that I wasn't. So sadly, more hammering to get the pole exactly placed where I needed it. My property had laid fallow for 14 years, so there was a lot of blown down dead trees and limbs all over the property. This is no exception, and you can see me clearing some of that out here to make a spot for the second pole. After a quick but very scientific check to make sure that this is angled properly, I start positioning the second pole. This involves, you guessed it, more digging, more rocks, and more roots. I realized in order to get these poles down deeper into the ground so that they're secured, I would need to get a little bit more leverage. So I brought in the ladder and of course the supervisor. He kind of got distracted here. I'm not sure what he was looking at, but he'll come back and check my work in a minute. You can see here, he came back to check the work area and he's obviously not happy with what he's found. Tools are laying around and it's probably an OSHA violation. But he moves on and goes to inspect my work on the large crossbeam. Honestly, I think Cooper found this to be the largest stick he's ever seen, and he was desperately trying to figure out how he could carry it off. You'll see here, he is looking for a grip point. Oh, that one looks good. Wait, maybe over here. He has no idea what he's going to do, but he knows that he has to get this thing out of here before I figure it out. They say work smarter, not harder. So you can see here I bring out the big guns. The 8-pound maul used for splitting, which just happens to have a big sledgehammer on the other end. By the way this pole is bouncing around, I can tell I'd hit a rock. Unfortunately, short of digging it out and moving it, there's not much you can do. So, final step is to cut these to height and set the top post. Before I can do that though, I need to flatten a spot on the crosspiece to allow it to sit on top and accept a screw to hold the whole thing together. I'm making a series of vertical notches here halfway through the log. I'll clean this up by running the chainsaw sideways briefly and then use a technique called brushing, which holds the bar at a 40-degree or 45-degree angle, and then you sweep it back and forth to clear off all the little chips left from knocking out the remainder of the slices.
It would have been easier if I'd done this when I took the tree down, but it is what it is. This is the remains of that maple tree that was growing through the side of the shed in my chainsaws and waterfalls or some video like that. I don't know. I had to clean that old maple that had grown through the side of the shed out. Just need to get this clean enough that I can drill a pilot hole and get a screw down through the flat side. That's good enough. Downside to this draw knife, in order for it to work, it's got to be razor sharp, and then you're pulling it towards yourself a lot of times. I don't have the appropriate bench that I should be using to keep this out of the way, so just got to be careful with it. It's probably gonna be good enough.
After a brief check on the chain to make sure the tightness was correct, I start the saw, this time in the approved manner, on the ground with my foot through the handle to keep it from swinging wild with a drop start. I'll mark this vertical post with a notch, then come back through and saw clean through. I don't get the cut square at first, so I have to clean it up a little bit. I know from experience about my solar panels, when they were leaning up against the deck at the best angle I could get, they were at about waist height. So that's how I mark the first post. And then I transfer that to the other end with a very scientific walk up next to it and hold my hand roughly where the other one is. I've had enough of dulling chainsaw chains, so I had the forethought to move the ladder before I cut through and swung into it. Every once in a while, I do the right thing. After a final check of the height of the second post, it's time to go and get the cross piece. This will rest across these, and it actually came out pretty level, especially considering my janky measuring techniques. You can see me stepping back here to check the level, and I was pretty shocked. Next, screwing down through the top piece into the top of the post. This was a pretty rustic frame for my solar panels, but for the cost of a few screws and some sticks that I made last year that are well seasoned, I got, I think, a pretty serviceable solar frame. The panels that I have came with my EcoFlow Delta 2 Max battery. They're 400 watts and they are foldable, so they're designed to take camping or on the road. I was going to stick with hard panels, but the mounting solutions for a hard solar panel are not as easy as this. I would have had to build a large solar frame. That would have meant a few days of reviewing the sun path to make sure I was putting it in the right spot, and then ordering lots and lots of copper cabling, which is one of the more expensive parts of the system. I finally get the panels lined up just the way I'd like them, and it's time to secure them down. These solar panels come with metal grommets integrated in the top, just for this purpose. So there's a series of, I think, 2 per panel, so 8 across the entire width, top and bottom, as well as a few on the sides, I believe. So it's very easy to secure in place and not move. Now, these have been up for a month and a half now as of this recording, and they're performing perfectly fine. I could use another 1,000 watts of solar panels just because the scarcity of the sun here in the Adirondack Park means that I need every watt that I can get. After a quick review, I walk around the back. You can see the connectors here where I've got the, I think, about 10-foot connection that comes with the panels attached to 30 feet of PV wire that runs in through this little outlet on the outside of the white deck tent that's designed specifically to run electrical wiring inside the tent, which I thought was a really cool design. It's zippered, so you can actually zip it down, and you can see I've got my solar lights running in there, as well as the Starlink cable.
Here's the Delta 2 Max. You see right now we're getting between 130 and 190 watts of PV an hour. Battery's at 40%. It was at 28% when I woke up this morning. So solar panels are doing their job. I'm not running anything right now, really. But I do need to plug in my little USB fan. So that is essential. Just turn it on. And this thing draws about 5 watts tops. But you can see it is a great little ceiling fan. And it helps at least move the air around in here. It's about 90 degrees in this tent right now. The only downside to canvas tents is that they are hot in the sun. Alright, so here's my Starlink setup. And again, it's plugged into the battery. I have the AC inputs disabled right now. It's a lot easier than plugging and unplugging. And I think you can do it from the Bluetooth app for this battery. But this is a 2 kilowatt battery, and you can see here, these are the ports where you can plug in 2 more additional 2 kilowatt batteries to make this a 6 kilowatt system. Right now, I'm just going to stick with the 2 kilowatts. I think about every day and a half, I'm going to have to top off the charge with the generator. Again, I apologize for the mess in here. I have to get my desk set up. It's going to go right here, and then I'll be able to move some of this stuff up and put stuff away. But I'm still in project land right now. Fortunately. All right, let me talk about my Starlink system. So I have the Gen 3 Starlink, which is the latest dish style. I have the residential service. For me, that means about $120 a month. It was $90 up until recently, and Starlink raised their rates on everybody. So it's $120 a month, which is a little more expensive than I was expecting, but not the end of the world. I pole mounted it, as you can see. This is a Harbor Freight 25 foot, 20 foot extendable flagpole. Now, the Harbor Freight flagpoles use a twist lock mechanism to hold the poles in place. And you can see I only have it extended about maybe 8 feet in the air. And I'm getting upwards of 385 megabits a second down, and then another 29 or 30 up, which is plenty for what I need. I might be able to get a little bit cleaner signal if I went up a little bit higher, but you can see I've got obstructions all around my property. And this was a big question mark for me. Am I going to be able to get a good enough satellite view? Especially since north is right about that direction where that giant poplar tree is, or beech tree. Not sure what it is. I think it might be a beech. Anyway, and the question is, like I did a star scan. I saw the obstructions. I went on Reddit, and I found a number of people who were in similar situations and said if they had trusted the obstruction map, they never would have gotten Starlink, but they're happy they have. It started at about 200 megabits a second and has gone up since then. If I left it on all day long, it would likely stabilize and give me a faster connection, but I turn it off when I'm not using the internet, and that's because this draws quite a bit of power. The Starlink all by itself draws about 110 watts of power. And more often than not, I'm using something else at the same time. So you can see I bought an aftermarket foot pole mount, because the pole mount that actually is designed by Starlink, I did the research on it. It is absolute garbage. It's only got a lip about this far down. So it only would have captured about a half an inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch at the top of the pole. This is a good solid 3 inches that it's in there, and it bolts through. So I was able to drill through the pole, tap it, and then bolt through it. And it's custom fit. It's got, I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a little bit of a flange in there that's custom fit for the top of this pole. And it's from a company called Satamount. I'll put the information in the description, but it works very well. The cable routes directly through it. The cable will plug in up here, but it routes down the inside of the pole, and then you can see down here, I've drilled out the side of the pole and then wrapped it in Gorilla Tape just to keep the sharp edges. I sanded them down as much as possible, but I wanted to keep the sharp edges off of the cabling. And then that runs directly under my deck over to the inlet on the white owl or the white duck tent. So that is fully underneath. And then in order to stabilize this pole, just because I wasn't real keen on the twist mounts, I got some of these self-tapping. They're really designed for like a metal roof, self-tapping with a rubber grommet. And they're short. They're like 3/4 inch. They're really, really small. And I just punched through the pipe here and the pipe above it because none of these are fully extended. So there's always right at the top at least a few inches of pipe inside. And so this locks it in. So I can still, at the end of the season, take these screws out, slide the pole down in, throw a plastic bag over the top of it, and then I'll be done. And then the dish will get packed up in the original box, which I saved and stored. I'm aiming to get a shed this year so that I have places to store things without having to drag them up the hill, way up there. That's gotten old really fast. But it still adds a secondary storage for stuff that I don't use a lot. I just throw up in that shack up there, and it gets it out from underfoot. You can see Cooper's enjoying a pool of light here. I don't know why he takes sun baths and then sits there panting in the heat, but it's going to be 78 degrees today. So hopefully we'll get some nice sunny weather and maybe I'll have a chance to actually relax. But that's the Starlink system. Now the other end of that, where that wire comes in, sorry for the mess here, I'm still organizing. The other end of that comes into this router, which anybody familiar with Starlink has seen the Starlink router, but here it is. This is the Gen 3 Starlink router. As I said, it uses about 110 watts of power, and it gets alarmingly hot, like concerningly hot, but it's just the way it runs, I guess. I have hardwired. It comes with 2 Ethernet ports on the back, but the Wi-Fi on this is pretty remarkable. Like I can use the internet at full speed around my entire property. So this router will actually cover the entire bottom of my property and about 1/3 of the way, maybe 1/4 of the way up the hill into the woods, and still get pretty good signal, which I heard it had limited range. But apparently not limited range when the only thing blocking it is canvas and potentially some grass, because I have internet all the way almost down to the road, so 300 feet or so down my driveway, another 300 or 400 feet up the hill, as well as all the way over to the outhouse on the other side of the kitchen. So the Starlink router by itself actually covers my entire workable property. So Starlink, yes, rousing success. It works very well to provide internet, as you can see, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and powered by the power of the sun with that little 400 watt solar array. I'll do another video on the solar system, talk about how that was. I'm sorry I didn't do any setup videos on any of these things. I was here by myself for the solar system in the tent and getting the deck prepped and carrying everything down the hill. And I had to get stuff done. And shooting adds 25 to 30% of time to any process. I'm constantly having to move the camera to get good camera angles or to get it out from underfoot. And it was hot. It was 81 degrees and I just wanted to get stuff done. So that's why that missed out. And then the Starlink system Matt and I worked on together. He helped me with that to get that set up. And again, it was another hot day. We just needed to get it done. There's a lot of crawling around underneath the deck, digging holes in Adirondack soil that's full of rocks and roots, which is always fun. getting it positioned, changing it, getting it positioned again, running the cabling, just all sorts of stuff. And it was super hot. Like I'm standing here right now, and even though it's only, I don't know, maybe 68 degrees, it feels really hot. There's not much of a breeze and the sun is beating down. So I'm gonna call it at that, but this is the Starlink system, Gen 3 with a Harbor Freight pole mount. The company I bought the third-party pole mount from is called satamount, and I'll put a link in the description to their site. As far as mounting the pole, the Harbor Freight pole comes with this PVC pipe. It's about 18 to 20 inches long, maybe 24 inches long. So we buried it down in the ground a good 8 to 10 inches. And then I used some U-bolts to just connect it to the side of the deck and stabilize it. Now, if I was gonna go up any higher than this, because it does go up to 20 feet, I would use the provided carabiners, and there's several of these little slide-on things that you can hook a carabiner to run guy wires. But at 8 feet in the air, it's really stable. It does not move around. We had a storm the other day with some pretty nasty winds, and it was rock solid, especially since I've got that pipe bolted together now. I'm not concerned about this at all. So it's a really nice setup, and as I said, I'm getting close to 380 megabits a second in the middle of the woods from solar power. So kudos to Starlink for that. Let's hope that the signal just keeps getting better as they shoot more satellites up.